Monday morning, she told him she doesn't date her boss. Tuesday, he stopped answering emails. Wednesday, the board called an emergency meeting. Thursday, security escorted Mun Shi-hoon out carrying a box labeled CEO. Friday, he showed up outside her building. "You said you don't date your boss," he said. She stared at him. "What did you do?" "I resigned." "Why?" "So I'm not your boss anymore." The man torpedoed his career in 4 days, all because she said no. But here's what Peyton didn't know yet. The firing wasn't romantic. It was strategic. And the board that just watched him walk out? They weren't done with either of them. Not even close.
"You're fired." The box shifted in his hands, but he didn't look away. Peyton's badge was still clipped to her blazer. She'd swiped in that morning the same way she always did. Now the magnetic strip might as well be plastic. "You can't be serious." Mun Shi-hoon's expression didn't change. Not anger, not regret, something worse, certainty. "I am." Behind them, the glass doors reflected everything. Her frozen stance, his stillness, the word CEO printed across the cardboard box he held like it belonged to someone else now. "You said you don't date your boss." Silence. Then, quieter than anything that should carry this much weight. "So I won't be your boss tomorrow." Peyton's breath caught in her chest and stayed there. Because there was only one question that mattered anymore. What kind of man dismantles his own empire overnight just to change the conditions of one answer? She didn't ask it out loud. The elevator lobby had gone silent in that specific way that means everyone's pretending not to listen. HR was somewhere behind them. Security near the desk. 3 analysts from her floor stood near the water cooler holding cups they weren't drinking from. This wasn't private. That was the point. Peyton looked at him, really looked. Shi-hoon's suit was pressed the way it always was. His posture hadn't shifted, but something in the way he held that box, careful, deliberate, said this wasn't impulse. This was a plan that had already been set in motion before she'd even walked into the building this morning. "I need to understand what you're doing," she said. "You will." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I can give you right now." Her hands were shaking. She tucked them into her pockets so no one else would see. Peyton Foster had rules. She'd built them carefully after Atlanta. After learning the hard way that power doesn't flirt, it tests boundaries. And once those boundaries bend, they don't straighten back out. She'd been 24 and hungry, and convinced that working harder than everyone else would be enough. Her supervisor had been 41 and charming, and very good at blurring the line between mentorship and something else entirely. The kind of something that started with late-night project reviews and ended with her transferring offices to avoid seeing him in the hallway. No one had called it harassment. Because it wasn't, not legally. He'd never touched her, never threatened her, just made it clear, quietly, carefully, that her career trajectory depended on how much she was willing to accommodate his attention. That's how power works when it's smart. It doesn't demand, it implies, doesn't threaten. It creates conditions where saying no feels like professional suicide. She'd learned that distinction the hard way. By the time she'd realized what was happening, she was already in too deep. Her performance reviews were glowing. Her project assignments were high visibility, and everyone in the office had started looking at her differently. Not with respect. With speculation. She'd left that job 6 months later. And when she'd landed the role here at a Korean-owned tech conglomerate expanding into the U.S. market, she'd promised herself it would be different. The Atlanta office was supposed to be her reset, structured, merit-based, clean. And it had been. Until Mun Shi-hoon noticed her. Not the way her old supervisor had. Shi-hoon didn't linger, didn't cross lines, didn't make comments that meant 2 things at once. But he noticed. The way she reorganized the logistics project that 3 senior managers had declared unsalvageable. How she pushed back in meetings, politely, precisely, when something didn't make sense. The way she never once tried to impress him. That last part seemed to matter most. In Korean corporate structures, there's something called nunchai. It's not taught in orientation. It's absorbed. The art of reading a room without being told. Understanding hierarchy not just as titles on a door but as invisible lines that dictate who speaks first, who defers, who carries weight. Peyton had learned it fast. The first month, she'd made the mistake of speaking up in a senior meeting before the division heads had finished their points. Nothing dramatic, just offering a solution to a logistics bottleneck. Her manager had pulled her aside afterward. "Wait for the pause," he'd said, not unkindly. "There's always a pause." She'd learned to recognize it, that specific beat of silence where junior staff were allowed to contribute, not before, not after, exactly then. It wasn't oppressive, just different. American corporate culture preached disruption, flat hierarchies, challenging the status quo. But half the time, that openness was performance. The real decisions still got made in rooms you weren't invited to. Korean systems were more honest about it. Hierarchy existed, it was visible, and if you respected it, you could navigate it. Peyton had navigated it well. Until the attention from the top became a variable she couldn't control. Keep your head down, deliver results, don't misread attention from the top. And absolutely, don't let workplace speculation attach itself to your name. Which is why when the whispers started, "She's getting special treatment, he only backs her ideas," Peyton had done what survival demanded. She drew a line. 3 weeks ago, in the break room, when one of the senior analysts made a joke about Shi-hoon's favorites, Peyton had looked him dead in the eye and said it clearly enough that everyone within earshot heard. "I don't date my boss." Simple, direct, untouchable. The analyst had laughed it off, but the message landed exactly where she needed it to. It should have been the end of it. Instead, it became the beginning of something she didn't see coming. Now she was standing in the lobby with her employment status in freefall in Mun Shi-hoon, holding a box that said he'd just resigned from the only position that gave him the authority to fire her in the first place. "This is insane," she said. "Probably. You're risking everything. Your board, your investors, They don't matter." She stared at him. How can they not matter? Because they already made their decision. What decision? He didn't answer. Strike one. Peyton stepped closer, lowering her voice even though everyone was still watching. She could feel eyes on her back, could practically hear the mental notes being taken. Every word of this conversation would be dissected in 3 different group chats before lunch. "You barely know me." Shi-hoon met her eyes. "I know enough." Strike two. Enough for what? To blow up your career, to walk away from a company you built. To make sure you don't pay for something that was never your fault. Strike three. Her pulse was too fast now. "I don't understand." "You will," he said again. Then, before she could respond, he shifted the box slightly, redistributing weight like the contents had just become heavier. "What's in there?" she asked. "Everything I won't need tomorrow." Shi-hoon. "Your access card's been deactivated. Your projects have been reassigned. HR will send termination paperwork by end of day." It was the flatness of his tone that did it. Not cruel, not apologetic, just factual. Like he was narrating someone else's firing. Peyton's brain was trying to catch up. "Wait, you deactivated my card before you even came down here." "Yes." So this conversation was already over before it started. The lobby felt smaller suddenly, the walls closer. "You can't just." "I already did." Her chest tightened. "Why?" Because staying would have destroyed you. The words landed wrong, too certain, too final. That doesn't make sense. It will. She wanted to scream, wanted to demand a real answer instead of these clipped non-explanations that sounded like he'd rehearsed them. But something stopped her. The way his jaw was set, the way his knuckles had gone white around the edge of the box, the way he was looking at her like this was the last time he'd be allowed to. And there was something else. His left hand. She'd seen it earlier when he'd first approached her. He'd been holding the box with both hands. Now his left hand was pressed against the side, fingers spread like he was keeping something from sliding out. But the box wasn't tilted. He was steadying himself. Go home, Peyton. Don't tell me what to do. I'm not your boss anymore, he said quietly, so I'm asking. The distinction landed like a slap. Because he was right. He wasn't her boss. Which meant every rule she'd built to protect herself from workplace power dynamics had just evaporated in the span of 5 minutes. And she had no idea what that meant. Behind them, elevator doors opened. Someone stepped out, saw them, and immediately stepped back in. The doors closed. The HR manager, Sandra, had moved closer, not intervening, just positioning herself within earshot. Peyton recognized the body language, witness documentation. If this turned into a legal situation later, Sandra was making sure she could provide testimony about what was said and when. That meant this wasn't just about her and Shi-hoon anymore. This was institutional. Peyton turned and walked toward the doors. Her heels clicked against the tile. Someone's phone buzzed. A chair scraped somewhere behind her. She didn't look back. But she felt it. Not his gaze. Something heavier. Consequences. The kind that don't announce themselves right away, but settle into your spine and wait. The automatic doors slid open. Cold air rushed in. Outside, Atlanta's January air hit her face like cold water. She pulled her coat tighter and kept walking. The sidewalk was crowded with lunch hour foot traffic. People moved around her like water around a stone. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but her thumb moved before her brain caught up. Hello. Silence on the other end, not dead air, the kind of silence that means someone's there just not speaking yet. Then a voice, female, calm, Korean accent underneath American English. You don't know what he protected you from. The line went dead. Peyton stopped walking. A businessman bumped into her shoulder, kept moving without apologizing. She replayed the sentence in her head. Protected you from. Not did for you. Protected. Which meant there was a threat. And it wasn't Shi-hoon. She looked back at the building, glass and steel and corporate polish. From the outside, it looked exactly like what it was supposed to be. Stable, respectable, safe. The logo near the entrance, Hanseong Industries, was brushed steel, elegant, permanent. But somewhere inside that structure, something had shifted. And Mun Shi-hoon had just removed himself from the equation entirely. Not to chase her. To shield her. From what? Peyton's hands were still shaking. She shoved them deeper into her coat pockets and started walking again. Her apartment was 12 blocks north. She could have called a rideshare. Should have, probably. But she needed the movement. Needed to think. Her phone buzzed again. This time a text from a number she recognized. Marissa Chen, one of the project coordinators on her team, former team. What the hell just happened? Peyton didn't respond. Another text, different number, David Kim from Analytics. Are you okay? She turned her phone off. Because she didn't have an answer. Not for them. Not for herself. The only thing she knew for certain was that 20 minutes ago, she'd had a job, a career trajectory, and a clear set of boundaries that kept her safe. Now she had none of those things. And the man who just dismantled all of it was standing in a corporate lobby, holding a box labeled CEO like it was evidence at a crime scene. Peyton turned the corner onto Peachtree Street, kept walking, and tried very hard not to think about the fact that she had no idea what happened next. Her laptop wouldn't connect. Peyton sat at her kitchen table staring at the login screen. She'd entered her credentials 3 times. The system kept returning the same message. Access denied. Contact IT support. She tried her email on her phone instead. Same message. It had been 47 minutes since she'd left the building. The efficiency was surgical. In most American companies, termination meant a grace period, HR meetings, exit interviews, a week to hand off projects, clean out your desk, say goodbye to people you'd spent years working alongside. Not here. Here, the system had already erased her. Peyton set her phone down, looked around her apartment like she was seeing it for the first time. The IKEA furniture she'd assembled herself, the framed print from the High Museum, the stack of trade publications on the coffee table she'd been meaning to read. Everything looked exactly the same. But she felt like she just stepped through a door that locked behind her. Her phone buzzed. Marissa again. They reassigned the Singapore expansion project. Miller's taking lead. Peyton read it twice. The Singapore project had been hers for 6 months. She'd rebuilt the entire logistics framework from scratch after the previous team had botched the vendor contracts. Miller had been on the periphery, competent, but not close to ready for that level of complexity. Another text. Your files are already locked. I tried to grab the vendor contact sheet for you, but the folder's restricted. Peyton's stomach tightened. 6 months of work gone. Not archived, not transferred with her notes and context intact. Just locked. Like it had never been hers to begin with. She started typing a response, stopped, deleted it. Because what was she supposed to say? Thanks for trying felt inadequate. This is insane felt dangerous. In hierarchical corporate structures, complaining about the system to someone still inside the system wasn't venting. It was liability. And Marissa was smart enough to know that. Which is probably why the next text said, I'm sorry, I have to go. No explanation. No let's grab coffee later or call me if you need anything. Just distance. Immediate and absolute. Peyton set the phone face down on the table. The apartment was too quiet. She stood, paced to the window, looked out at the street below. A delivery truck idled at the corner. 2 women in business casual walked past holding Starbucks cups. A cyclist ran a red light. Normal life, continuing like nothing had shifted. But something had. She could feel it. The same way you feel a storm coming before the sky changes. By evening, 3 more people had texted her. David from analytics, Junseo from compliance, and someone she didn't recognize, a number with a 404 area code. All 3 messages said some version of the same thing. Are you okay? Let me know if you need anything. This is crazy. None of them offered to meet up. None of them suggested talking on the phone. Just text quick, deniable. Peyton didn't respond to any of them. Because she was starting to understand something. In American corporate culture, getting fired was personal. It meant you'd failed, but it also meant the company had failed you. There was room for ambiguity, for solidarity. But here termination wasn't personal. It was systematic. And if the system had removed you, the system had a reason. Which meant associating with you was associating with whatever reason the system had decided you represented. Risk by proximity. That's what this was. Not cruelty. Self-preservation. Her phone buzzed again. This time, a name she recognized but hadn't expected. Claire Westbrook, VP of Operations. American, 15-year veteran who'd been with Hanseong since the U.S. expansion began. "Can we talk?" Peyton stared at the message. Claire had always been professional, distant but fair. She didn't do office politics, didn't engage in speculation. If Claire was reaching out, it meant something. Peyton called. Claire picked up on the second ring. "Where are you?" Claire's voice was low, controlled. "Home." "Good, stay there." Peyton's pulse kicked up. "What's going on?" A pause, then. "There's an article. It's in Korean, but it's making rounds internally." "What kind of article?" "Business column, Seoul publication. It dropped about an hour ago." Peyton's chest tightened. "What does it say?" "I'll send you the translation." "Claire." "Read it first, then we'll talk." The line went dead. 30 seconds later, a PDF appeared in her text messages. Peyton opened it. The headline was neutral, almost boring. "Leadership Transition at Hanseong Industries, U.S. Division." But the subheading wasn't. "Executive misconduct allegations, prompt sudden departure." She kept reading. "Sources close to the company report concerns over inappropriate favoritism involving a foreign national employee in the Atlanta office. While no formal charges have been filed, internal ethics reviews revealed a pattern of preferential treatment that violated company policy on conflicts of interest." Mun Shi-hoon, who served as CEO of the U.S. operations for 3 years, resigned effective immediately. The employee in question has also been terminated. A spokesperson for Hanseong Industries declined to comment on specific details, citing personnel confidentiality. No names. But it didn't need names. The details were precise enough. Foreign employee, Atlanta office, immediate termination. Anyone inside the company would know exactly who this was about. Peyton read it again. Then a third time. And that's when she noticed something. The language. Concerns over inappropriate favoritism. Not allegations from outside, concerns from inside. Internal ethics reviews. Not an investigation triggered by misconduct, a review that had already been happening. Pattern of preferential treatment. Not a single incident, a pattern. This wasn't a reaction to something Shi-hoon had done yesterday. This was something that had been building. And the article, buried in a Seoul business column most Americans would never see, wasn't journalism. It was strategy. Controlled leak, narrow distribution, just enough detail to frame the narrative without triggering U.S. labor laws or defamation exposure. In multinational corporations, scandals aren't accidents. They're tools. You don't destroy a reputation by screaming. You do it by whispering in exactly the right direction. Let the information spread organically. Let people fill in the gaps themselves. By the time the story reaches critical mass, no one remembers where it started. They just remember what it said. Peyton's phone rang. Claire again. "You read it?" "Yeah." "Then you understand what's happening." Peyton's throat was dry. "They're framing this as his fault." "They're framing it as both of your faults," Claire corrected. "But they're making sure his name takes the bigger hit." "Why?" "Because he's the one who walked away. You're just collateral." "Collateral?" The word sat heavy in Peyton's chest. "What do I do?" she asked. Claire was quiet for a moment, then, "Nothing. Nothing. You don't respond. You don't defend yourself. You don't reach out to former colleagues trying to explain your side." "But..." "Peyton, listen to me." Claire's voice was firm now. The moment you engage with this narrative, you legitimize it. You make it a story worth covering. Right now, it's a controlled burn. If you fight it, you turn it into a wildfire. Peyton closed her eyes. So I just let them say whatever they want. You let it pass. You let the next news cycle bury it, and you move on. That's not fair. No, Claire agreed, it's not. Silence stretched between them. Then Claire added, quieter. For what it's worth, I don't think you did anything wrong. Peyton's chest ached. Then why won't anyone say that out loud? Because saying it out loud means choosing a side. And in this company, choosing sides is how you become the next target. The line went dead. Peyton sat in the dark. Outside, Atlanta kept moving. Inside, the walls felt closer. Her phone buzzed one more time. Unknown number again. She almost didn't open it. But she did. You don't know what he protected you from. The same message as before. This time she responded. Who is this? 3 dots appeared, typing. Then, someone who knows what the board wanted to do to you. Peyton's breath caught. What are you talking about? They were building a case, formal investigation, legal exposure. They were going to make an example out of you. Her hands were shaking now. Why? Because you made him look weak, and in this system, weakness is contagious. Another message. He stepped down to break the chain, took the hit himself. Peyton stared at the screen. Who are you? No response. She waited. Nothing. But her brain was already connecting pieces. The firing, the public spectacle, the immediate access revocation. It wasn't punishment. It was protection. If she'd stayed under his authority, the investigation would have stuck. Her name attached to his, her career destroyed permanently. But if she left clean, immediate witnessed, it fractured the narrative. Made her a footnote instead of a co-defendant. And Shi-hoon. He became the only target left. Peyton stood, paced the length of her apartment, turned, paced back. Her phone buzzed again. Different number this time. A Seoul area code. She answered without thinking. Hello. Silence. Then a voice, male, accented English. Miss Foster, my name is Kim Yi-sung. I'm with Hanseong's board of directors. Her stomach dropped. I'm calling to inform you that any further contact with Mun Shi-hoon will be considered a violation of your separation agreement. I don't have a separation agreement yet. You will, and when you do, you'll sign it. It wasn't a question. Why are you telling me this? She asked. Because I want to make sure you understand the terms clearly. I haven't been given any terms. You will be tomorrow morning, and you'll find them very generous, provided you comply. Her pulse was too fast. Comply with what? Silence, distance, and discretion. A pause. Then, Mr. Mun made a choice that cost this company significant credibility. We would prefer that cost doesn't extend further. He didn't do anything wrong. That's not for you to determine. Her hands clenched. You're threatening me. I'm clarifying expectations. The line went dead. Peyton stood in her apartment. Lights off. Phone still in her hand. And for the first time since this started, she understood. This wasn't about romance. This wasn't about scandal. This was about control. And the machine behind Mun Shi-hoon had just turned its attention directly onto her. She found him 3 days later. Not at Hanseong, not at his house in Buckhead that she'd never been to but had heard people mention. In a small office building in Midtown, 4th floor, no logo on the door, just a suite number. Peyton had gotten the address from Jun Seo in compliance. He hadn't wanted to give it to her, had made her promise not to tell anyone where it came from. She'd promised. Now she stood outside a door that looked like it belonged to an accountant or a therapist. Something quiet, something forgettable. She knocked. No answer. She tried the handle, unlocked. Inside, the space was smaller than his old office by a factor of 10. No glass walls, no view, a desk that looked rented, 2 chairs, a laptop, a single box in the corner that she recognized immediately. CEO. He was standing by the window, not looking out, just standing. He turned when she entered. Didn't look surprised. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "Yeah, well, I got a call from your board telling me to stay away from you, so naturally I'm here." Shi-hoon's jaw tightened. "Yi-sung called you." "Last night." "What did he say?" "That I'm supposed to sign a separation agreement, stay silent, keep my distance, or else." "You should do what he says." Peyton stepped further into the room, let the door close behind her. "Is that what you're doing?" "I don't work for them anymore." "That doesn't answer my question." He didn't respond. She looked around, took in the bare walls, the absence of anything personal, the way this space felt temporary, like he'd rented it by the week and hadn't decided if he was staying. "You made a decision for me," she said. "Yes." "Without telling me." "Yes." "You fired me, publicly, in front of people I have to see again if I ever work in this industry." "I know." Her hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against her thighs. "You don't get to do that." "I already did." "Shi-hoon." "You want an apology." His voice was calm, too calm. "I don't have one, I'd do it again." Something cracked in her chest. "You controlled my life." "I removed myself from your life. There's a difference." "Not to me." He turned back to the window. "Then we're at an impasse." Peyton crossed the room, stopped 3 feet from him, close enough to see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands were pressed into his pockets like he was keeping them from reaching for something. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked. "Tell you what?" "That the board was building a case, that they were targeting me." He went still. "How do you know that?" "Someone sent me a message, told me you stepped down to protect me." "Who?" "I don't know, they wouldn't say." Shi-hoon exhaled slowly, turned to face her. "You shouldn't believe anonymous messages." "So it's not true." A pause. Then, "It's true." The confirmation landed heavier than she expected. "When did it start?" she asked. 2 months ago." Her stomach dropped. 2 months. "The board flagged you after the Singapore project, said you were rising too fast, getting too much visibility." "I earned that visibility." "I know." "Then what's the problem?" "You made me look weak." She stared at him. "What?" Shi-hoon moved to one of the chairs, sat. "Not you specifically, the situation. A CEO who promotes someone without unanimous board support, who defends their decisions publicly, who doesn't fall in line when questioned." He gestured to the other chair. She didn't take it. "In American companies, that's called leadership," she said. "In Korean corporate governance structures, it's called a liability." Peyton's hands clenched. "I didn't ask for special treatment." "You didn't need to. Your work spoke for itself. That was the problem." "My competence was a problem." "Your independence was." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Boards don't just govern companies. They govern predictability. And you were unpredictable. You pushed back in meetings. You reorganized failing projects without asking permission first. You didn't read the room before speaking." "That's not." "It's not wrong," he interrupted, "but it's not how the system expects juniors to behave, especially juniors the CEO publicly supports." Peyton finally sat, not in the chair he gestured to earlier, on the edge of the desk. "So they decided I was a threat. They decided you were a variable, and my support made you dangerous. Because it looked like favoritism, and favoritism implies compromised judgment, and compromised judgment destabilizes leadership. She was starting to understand now. Not just what happened, why it was always going to happen. They told you to reassign me, she said. Yes. And you didn't. No. Why not? Because reassignment wouldn't have stopped them. His voice was steady, no emotion, just fact. Yi-sung made it clear. Moving you to a different division would delay the problem, maybe 6 months, but eventually they'd find another reason, another project where you stood out, another moment where I defended a decision they didn't authorize. Peyton's throat was tight, so you fired me instead. I removed you from their jurisdiction. That's not. It is. He stood, crossed to the box in the corner, pulled out a folder, handed it to her. She opened it. Standard severance, 6-month salary, non-disparagement clause, non-compete limited to direct competitors. Then page 4. A clause buried in legal language that took her 3 reads to parse. Employee agrees to waive all claims related to workplace conduct, including but not limited to allegations of favoritism, preferential treatment, or ethics violations, in exchange for the considerations outlined herein. They want me to sign away my right to defend myself, she said. Yes. What if I don't? They'll reduce the severance, broaden the non-compete, possibly leak more details. Peyton set the folder down. You're saying I have no choice. I'm saying you have one choice that doesn't destroy you. She looked at him. Why didn't you tell me any of this before you fired me? Because telling you would have triggered them faster. How? Shi-hoon was quiet for a moment, then. Information moves in corporate structures, not through official channels, through assumptions. If I'd pulled you aside to warn you, someone would have noticed. HR would have flagged the private meeting. Yi-sung would have assumed I was coaching you to prepare a defense. So they would have escalated immediately. Formal investigation, legal review, full audit of every project you touched. They would have built a case that your promotions were tied to personal relationships before you even knew you needed to defend yourself. Peyton's chest tightened, because she understood now. In high-stakes corporate governance, silence isn't weakness. It's strategy. The moment leadership signals that someone's being targeted, the institution moves faster, locks down evidence, builds narrative infrastructure. By the time the person realizes they're in danger, the case is already airtight. You couldn't warn me without making it worse, she said slowly. No. So you just decided. Yes. Her hands were shaking again. That's not protection, that's control. It's both. You don't get to. I already did, he said quietly, and I'd do it again, because the alternative was watching them destroy you while you tried to fight a system you couldn't see. Silence settled between them. Peyton stood, walked to the window he'd been staring out of earlier. The view was nothing, an alley, a dumpster, the back of another building. What would they have done, she asked, if you'd stayed? Internal audit would have escalated. They would have reviewed every decision I made regarding your career, every promotion, every project assignment, every performance review. And they would have found patterns, not evidence of misconduct, just patterns that could be interpreted as favoritism. That's not proof. It doesn't need to be. In reputation management, perception is enough. He moved closer but didn't touch her. Once the audit report existed, it would have leaked, not officially, just whispers in the right circles. Recruiters would hear about it, hearing managers at competitors, industry contacts. Blacklisting, Peyton said. Not formal, there's no list, but your name would carry a question mark, And in this industry, question marks don't get hired. Her stomach turned. Because he was right. She'd seen it happen to others. Engineers who left companies under unclear circumstances. Analysts whose references came back vague. They didn't disappear. They just stopped rising. You stepped down to break the chain, she said. Yes. By making yourself the story. Yes. She turned, but it didn't work. His expression shifted, just barely. What do you mean? The article's still spreading. Your board member called me directly. The narrative isn't stopping. I know. You said removing yourself would protect me. It protected you from the audit, from the investigation, from having your career destroyed by association. But, he was quiet. But, she pressed. But Yi-sung doesn't stop until threats are neutralized. I'm not a threat. You're a variable, and as long as you're connected to me, professionally, personally, or otherwise, you represent instability. Peyton's chest tightened. What does that mean? Shi-hoon didn't answer. And that scared her more than anything he could have said. You didn't just step down to protect me, she said slowly. You stepped down because staying meant you'd become the weapon they used against me. He met her eyes. Yes. So you removed yourself. Yes. But they're still coming. A pause. Then, I think so. Why? Because the system doesn't just want me gone. It wants to make sure I can't come back, and the best way to do that. He stopped. Peyton finished the thought. Is to make sure anyone associated with you becomes untouchable too. Silence. Outside, a car horn blared. Someone shouted, normal life continuing. Inside, the walls felt closer. If stepping down was supposed to neutralize the threat, Peyton said quietly, why does it feel like the system's just getting started? Shi-hoon's jaw tightened. I don't know yet. But you suspect something. Yes. What? He looked at her. And for the first time since she'd walked into this office, she saw something besides control in his expression. Uncertainty. I think Yi-sung's building a second narrative, he said. One that doesn't just remove me, one that makes sure no one else tries what I did. What does that mean? It means the story isn't over. Peyton's pulse kicked up. What's coming? I don't know. But, I don't know, he repeated, and that's what scares me. You're fired. The memory came back different now. Peyton sat in Shi-hoon's temporary office, staring at the separation agreement in her hands, and the entire scene replayed with new weight. The box shifting in his hands, not from nerves, from precision, holding it exactly where security cameras would catch the CEO label. Her badge still clipped to her blazer, not an oversight, evidence, proof she'd been on active duty when the termination occurred. The glass doors behind them, reflecting everything. Witnesses. You needed people to see it, she said. Shi-hoon looked up from his laptop. Yes. HR security, the analysts by the water cooler. Yes. Why? He closed the laptop, set it aside. Because private terminations are ambiguous. They leave room for speculation. He said, she said, timeline disputes. But public ones are documented, time-stamped, witnessed by multiple parties who have no stake in the outcome. Peyton's chest tightened. You were building a legal record. I was creating separation, clean, immediate, undeniable. She looked down at the agreement again, at the clause on page 4, the one about waiving claims related to favoritism and preferential treatment. If I'd been fired privately, she said slowly, they could have argued we were still involved, that the termination was just for show. Yes, but because it was public, with documented witnesses and immediate access revocation, The separation is legally defensible. Her hands were shaking again. You weren't just protecting me from the board, you were protecting me from a lawsuit. Shi-hoon didn't confirm it out loud. He didn't have to. In workplace relationship disputes, the legal exposure isn't always criminal. It's civil, conflict of interest claims, ethics violations, allegations that professional advancement was tied to personal relationships. Even if the relationship never existed. Even if every promotion was earned. The accusation alone could trigger investigations that lasted years, legal fees that bankrupted, reputational damage that followed you across industries. Unless the separation was so clean, so public, so documented that the timeline couldn't be disputed. The box, Peyton said. What about it? You were holding it when you fired me. CEO printed right on the side. Yes. That wasn't symbolic, that was evidence. Shi-hoon's jaw tightened. It was both. She stood cross to where he sat. You planned the whole thing, every detail. Yes. How long? 2 days. After Yi-sung gave you the ultimatum. After I realized reassigning you wouldn't stop them. Her throat was tight, so you fired me instead. I removed you from the structure that made you vulnerable. By making yourself the story. Yes. Peyton's mind was racing now, reframing every moment of that conversation. His silence when she demanded answers, not cruelty, risk management. The less he said, the less could be used against either of them later. His calm when she'd accused him of overreacting, not indifference, premeditated sacrifice. He'd already calculated the cost and decided it was worth it. The way he'd adjusted the box when she'd asked why the board opposed him, redistributing weight, not because the contents shifted. Because he was steadying himself for what came next. You weren't being cryptic, she said. You were being careful. I was being both. Why not just tell me? Because if I'd told you the plan, you would have tried to stop it. You don't know that. Yes, I do. His voice was firm. You would have argued, pushed back, tried to find another solution, and every minute we spent debating gave the board more time to escalate. So you decided for me. I decided for both of us. That's not the same thing. No, he agreed, it's not. Silence settled between them. Peyton turned away, walked to the window, stared at the nothing view. The article, she said, the one in Seoul, it says you resigned due to misconduct. I know. It's not true. It doesn't matter. Of course it matters. Not legally. He stood, moved closer but didn't touch her. The article frames me as the problem. That's intentional. It shifts focus away from you. By destroying your reputation. My reputation was always going to be the cost. She turned. How can you be okay with that? Because the alternative was watching them destroy yours. The words landed clean. No hesitation, no self-pity. Just fact. Peyton's eyes stung. You gave up everything. I gave up a position. That's not everything. It was your company. It was a job. His voice was steady. And I chose to leave it before it forced me to become someone I didn't want to be. What does that mean? It means staying CEO meant either sacrificing you to protect the board's stability or fighting them and losing anyway. Both options required me to operate in a system where control was the only currency that mattered. He paused. I didn't want to keep playing by those rules. Peyton stared at him. At the man who'd walked away from a multi-million-dollar position, because staying meant becoming complicit in institutional cruelty. You didn't chase me, she said quietly. No. You dismantled the entire structure that made me vulnerable. Yes. Her chest ached. Why? Because you were right. That day in the break room, You said you don't date your boss. I remember. And you were right to say it. Power imbalances aren't romantic. They're dangerous. They create conditions where consent becomes impossible to measure. He stepped closer. I couldn't change your answer while I was still your boss, so I stopped being your boss. Peyton's breath caught. You don't get to decide for me, she said. I already stopped deciding for you the moment I stepped down. That's not, she stopped, because it was true. Everything he'd done since that moment had been removal, not control. He'd removed himself from the hierarchy, removed his authority over her career, removed the power dynamic that made any relationship between them inherently coercive. And in doing so, he'd removed his ability to influence her answer. You're not protecting me anymore, she said. No. You're not making decisions for me. No. Then what are you doing? He met her eyes. Waiting. The word hung in the air between them. For what, she asked. For you to decide what happens next, without pressure, without obligation, without any structure that makes saying no feel impossible. Peyton's hands were trembling. What if I still say no? A pause. Then it's the first decision you make that I don't try to change. Her throat was too tight to speak. Because she understood now. This wasn't a grand gesture. It was the opposite. It was the systematic dismantling of every advantage he'd ever had over her, every tool he could have used to influence her choice. He didn't lower himself to her level. He removed the levels entirely. You could have just asked me out, she said. No, I couldn't. Why not? Because as long as I was your boss, any answer you gave would have been contaminated by power. You would have spent the rest of your life wondering if you'd said yes because you wanted to, or because saying no felt too risky. He stepped back. I didn't want you to wonder. Peyton's vision blurred. She blinked it back. This is insane, she said. Probably. No one does this. I know. You lost everything. Not everything. His voice was quiet, just the things that were making me complicit. She looked at him. At the man standing in a rented office, with nothing but a laptop and a cardboard box. No title, no authority, no leverage. Just choice. Hers. I don't know what to do with this, she said. You don't have to do anything. Not today, not tomorrow, not until you're ready. And if I'm never ready, then I'll know that too. Silence stretched. Outside, a car horn blared. Someone shouted. Normal life continuing in a world that had no idea what was happening in this room. Peyton wiped her eyes. You're an idiot. Maybe. You destroyed your career for someone you barely know. I know enough. You know my work ethic. You know I don't take shortcuts. That's not the same as knowing me. Then tell me what I don't know. She stared at him. What? You said I barely know you, so tell me, what don't I know? Her chest tightened. That's not. I have time, he said, and nothing left to lose. Peyton exhaled shakily. I don't trust easily. I know. No, you don't. Her voice was sharper now. You know I have boundaries. You know I'm careful, but you don't know why. He waited. She crossed her arms. Atlanta, my last job. My supervisor wasn't. He didn't assault me, didn't harass me in any way that would hold up legally, but he made it very clear that my career depended on how accommodating I was willing to be. Shi-hoon's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. I left that job because staying meant either giving in or watching everything I'd built fall apart. She paused. So when you say you dismantled the power structure to give me a real choice, I need you to understand that this is the first time anyone's ever done that. His jaw tightened. I'm sorry that happened to you. I'm not telling you for sympathy. I'm telling you because you need to know that I don't give people second chances. I don't wait around to see if someone who controlled my life once will do it again. I understand. Do you? Yes. Peyton stepped closer. If I walk out of here right now and never speak to you again, what happens? Nothing. You don't follow up, don't check in, don't try to convince me. No. What if I sign the agreement and move to another city? Then I hope you find something better. You just let me go. Yes. Her breath caught. Why? Because that's what real choice looks like. The room felt smaller suddenly. Peyton looked down at the separation agreement still in her hands. At the clause that would protect her legally. At the signature line waiting for her decision. If I sign this, she said slowly, I'm agreeing that nothing happened between us, that there was no favoritism, no preferential treatment. Yes. But that also means if we, she stopped, started again. It means there's no record, no timeline, no proof that anything started after you stepped down. That's correct. So if people talk, they'll talk regardless. But I won't be able to prove them wrong. No. She looked up at him. You're asking me to choose between legal protection and my reputation. I'm not asking you anything, he said quietly. The agreement is yours to sign or not, but either way I'm done making choices for you. Peyton set the folder down. Walked to the door. Stopped. Turned back. You said the narrative isn't finished yet, that there's more coming. Yes. What is it? Shi-hoon was quiet for a long moment. Then, I don't know, but I know Yi-sung, and I know he doesn't stop until the threat is completely neutralized. I'm not a threat. You're a variable, and variables destabilize systems. Her stomach turned. What does that mean? It means as long as you're connected to me in any way, professionally, personally, or otherwise, you represent risk, and Yi-sung eliminates risk. How? He didn't answer, and that scared her more than anything he could have said. She signed the agreement 4 days later. Not in Shi-hoon's temporary office, at her kitchen table, alone. The pen felt heavier than it should have. Peyton Foster, March 14th, signature clear and deliberate. She scanned it, sent it to the email address Yi-sung's assistant had provided, got an automated confirmation within 30 seconds. Your submission has been received and is under review. She closed her laptop, stared at the wall, and waited for something to feel different. It didn't. The apartment was still too quiet. Atlanta was still moving outside her window, and the man who dismantled his entire career to remove himself as a weapon being used against her was still sitting in a 4th-floor office in Midtown with nothing but a laptop and a cardboard box. She hadn't seen him since she'd walked out. Hadn't called. Hadn't texted. Because she didn't know what to say. Thank you for protecting me felt wrong. I didn't ask you to do that felt cruel. I don't know if I can forgive you felt true, but incomplete. So she'd said nothing. And apparently so had he. No follow-up, no check-in, no attempt to convince her of anything. Just silence. The kind that meant he was keeping his word. 3 weeks passed. The article in Seoul stopped circulating. New scandals replaced it. The business cycle moved on. Peyton's phone stopped buzzing with messages from former colleagues. The separation payment hit her account, 6 months' salary, exactly as outlined. She updated her resume, started reaching out to recruiters, got 3 interviews within the first week. One of them was with a competitor, American-owned, flat hierarchy. They loved her Singapore project experience. She almost took it. But something stopped her. Not fear. Something else. The recruiter had asked why she'd left Hanseong. She'd given the practiced answer: organizational restructuring, leadership transition, mutual decision to part ways. The recruiter had nodded, moved on. But Peyton had felt it, the lie sitting heavy in her chest. Because it wasn't mutual. And it wasn't restructuring. It was a man who'd chosen to sacrifice his position rather than become complicit in a system that was grinding her down. And she didn't know what to do with that. On a Thursday in early April, Claire called. "You still in Atlanta?" Claire's voice was casual, too casual. "For now." "Good, because I have something you should hear." Peyton's stomach tightened. "What?" Yi-sung stepped down. Silence. "What?" Board voted him out, effective immediately. "Why?" "Officially, strategic differences with Seoul headquarters. Unofficially," Claire paused. "He overplayed his hand." Peyton sat down. "I don't understand." "The article, the one about Shi-hoon. Turns out Yi-sung was the one who leaked it. Seoul didn't authorize it. When they found out, they weren't happy." "Why not?" "Because it created legal exposure, made the company look unstable, and in Korean corporate culture, stability is everything." Peyton's mind was racing, "So they removed him." "Quietly, same way he tried to remove you." "What happens now?" "New board leadership, new CEO, clean slate." Claire's voice softened. "They want you back." Peyton's breath caught. "What?" "Different division, new reporting structure, no connection to the old leadership. They're offering full reinstatement, back pay for the separation period, and a formal apology." "An apology?" "In writing, for the way your termination was handled." Peyton stood, paced to the window. "Why?" "Because the new CEO is cleaning house, getting rid of anyone associated with Yi-sung's methods, and part of that means correcting what he did wrong." I need to think about it." "Take your time. Offers open for 2 weeks." The line went dead. Peyton stared at her reflection in the window. At the woman who'd been fired publicly, threatened privately, told to stay silent and disappear. And now, invited back. On new terms. She picked up her phone. Scrolled to a number she hadn't called in 3 weeks. Hesitated. Then dialed. He answered on the second ring. "Peyton." Just her name, no question, no surprise. "Claire called," she said. "I know." "You know." "She called me first, asked if I thought you'd come back." "What did you say?" "That it wasn't my decision to make." "Of course he did." "They offered me my job back," she said. "I heard." "Different division, new leadership, clean slate." "That's good." "Is it?" A pause. "Do you want it to be?" he asked. Peyton closed her eyes. "I don't know." "Then don't decide yet." "I have 2 weeks." "That's plenty of time." Silence stretched. Then, "Did you know Yi-sung was going to get removed?" she asked. "I suspected." "But you didn't tell me." "No." "Why not?" "Because hopping for it and knowing it were different things, and I didn't want you making decisions based on variables I couldn't control." Even now, even after everything, he was still calculating risk, still trying to manage outcomes. But this time, he was managing them by staying out of her way. "I need to see you," she said. "When?" "Now." She met him at the same glass building. Not inside, outside. Same entrance where he'd fired her 2 months ago. The spring air was warmer now. The trees had started budding. Atlanta had shifted from winter to something softer. Shi-hoon was waiting near the curb. No box this time, no suit either. Just jeans and a dark sweater, and the same stillness he always carried. He looked different without the CEO polish. More real. Peyton stopped 3 feet from him. You could have told me Yi-sung might get removed, she said. I could have. But you didn't. No. Because you didn't want to influence my decisions. Yes. She stepped closer. What if I'd taken the job with the competitor? What if I'd left Atlanta entirely? Then you would have made the right choice for you. Even if it meant I never saw you again. He didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was quiet. Yes. Peyton's chest ached. Because he meant it. This wasn't strategy, wasn't calculation. It was surrender. The complete abdication of control. I'm taking the job, she said. Something shifted in his expression. Relief maybe, or something close to it. Good. Different division, different boss, no overlap with you whatsoever. I know. Which means, she paused, if there's anything between us, it won't be a conflict of interest. No, it won't. There's no power imbalance. No. No hierarchy. No. No leverage you could use to influence my career. None. She looked at him. At the man who'd given up everything to make sure this exact conversation could happen without coercion. You made a life-altering decision without my consent, she said. I did. You controlled the outcome before I even knew there was a situation. Yes. That's not okay. I know. But you'd do it again. A pause. If the alternative was watching you get destroyed by a system I helped build, yes, I'd do it again. Peyton's throat tightened. That's the problem. I know that too. So what happens now? Shi-hoon's hands were in his pockets. He didn't move closer, didn't reach for her. Just stood there. Waiting. I don't have power over you anymore, he said. I don't have influence. I don't have leverage. I don't even have a position you could accuse me of abusing. He paused. Which means for the first time since we met, if you say yes to anything I ask, it'll be because you want to, not because saying no feels dangerous. And if I say no, then I don't ask again. The finality of it landed hard. Because he wasn't promising to wait. Wasn't suggesting they could try again later. He was offering one chance. One question. One answer. And whatever she said would be the end of it. No pressure. No second guessing. Just choice. Real choice. The kind that existed in the absence of coercion. Peyton looked up at the building behind him. At the glass and steel and corporate architecture that had been the backdrop for everything that happened between them. 2 months ago, she'd walked out of those doors with no job, no answers, and no idea what came next. Now, she was walking back in. On her terms. With new leadership, new structure, new possibilities. And the man who dismantled his entire career to make that possible was standing in front of her, with nothing left to offer but honesty. You said something that day, she said, in the lobby when you fired me. I said a lot of things. You said you don't date your boss. He went still. And then you said, so I won't be your boss tomorrow. Yeah, she stepped closer, that. Silence. The street around them kept moving, cars passing, people walking, the city indifferent to what was happening between two people on a sidewalk. Now you're not my boss, Peyton said. Shi-hoon's expression didn't change, but his breath caught, just barely. A beat. Then, no, I'm not. She held his gaze. So ask me again. The words hung between them. Not a yes. Not a no. Just an invitation. To ask the question he'd never actually asked the first time. The one that got buried under termination paperwork and legal strategy and board politics. Shi-hoon didn't move for a long moment. Then, Peyton Foster. Her name sounded different in his voice now, less formal, more real. Would you have dinner with me? Simple. Direct. No power behind it, no leverage, no system that made saying no feel impossible. Just a question. Hers to answer. She looked at him. At the man who'd lost everything to make sure this moment could exist. At the choice that was finally, completely hers. Yes. One word. But it carried weight that 2 months of silence and strategy and sacrifice had built toward. Not because she owed him. Not because saying no felt dangerous. Because she wanted to. And for the first time. That was enough. Shi-hoon exhaled slowly. When? Tonight. Where? Somewhere that's not here. A faint smile, the first real one she'd seen from him since this started. I know a place. Peyton stepped back. No corporate restaurants, no places where your former board members eat. Agreed. And we split the check. His smile widened slightly. If you insist. I do. Then we will. She turned to walk away, stopped, looked back. Shi-hoon. Yeah. This doesn't fix everything. The smile faded, but his expression stayed open. I know. I'm still angry you made that choice without me. I know. And I don't know if I'll ever be okay with the way it happened. I know that too. She held his gaze. But I'm willing to see what happens when the choice is actually mine. That's all I'm asking. Peyton nodded, turned, and walked back toward the glass building, toward the job she'd earned, the career she'd fought for, the life she'd rebuilt on her own terms. And tonight, she'd have dinner with a man who had nothing left to offer but honesty. No power, no control, just choice. Hers, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough.
Protection versus control. Autonomy versus safety. Turns out the hardest decisions aren't between right and wrong. They're between two kinds of right that can't coexist. If that tension hits different for you, there are more stories like this one here.